Stalag 13 was supposed to be one of the smallest backlots in Hollywood. By the time Hogan's Heroes finished its sixth season, the camp had become one of television's loudest, weirdest, and most quietly radical comedies of the 1960s, a World War II setting used as the launching pad for a Cold War satire. On screen, Colonel Robert Hogan, Bob Crane, Quick Hands, Quicker Grin, and a hand-picked crew of Allied POWs ran a sabotage operation under the noses of a German commandant who could lose a chess game to a fern. You already know Werner Klemperer's perpetually panicky Colonel Klink, John Banner's soft-hearted Sergeant Schultz, Richard Dawson's pickpocket Corporal Newkirk, Ivan Dixon's calm Sergeant Kinch, Robert Clary's French forger LeBeau, and Larry Hovis's demolition-obsessed Sergeant Carter. From Season 2, Sigrid Valdis slipped in as Hilda, Klink's new secretary, replacing the Latvian-born Cynthia Lynn, whose first season Fräulein Helga had made a quick, indelible impression. 6 seasons. 168 episodes. A logo that turned up on CBS, in Army surplus shops, in late-night reruns for decades, and eventually on a streaming app, with the same crisp snare rimshot at the top of every episode. But Stalag 13 kept secrets off camera, a Tonight Show side gig, a Korean War test pilot hiding inside a sergeant's last name, a session musician nobody ever thanked, a court case 16 years in the making, and an ending that wasn't really an ending at all. These are 15 shocking facts about Hogan's Heroes. And be sure to stay through number 15, because that's where a Hollywood murder trial, an acquittal, and a case file that never closed collide in a way the network would have preferred to keep buried, and most of the country now has. Before we crack the bunker, hit like and subscribe for more deep dives into the classic shows that refuse to die. The march starts now. Number 1, Kinch's name was borrowed from a jet age hero. Sergeant James Kinch Kinchlowy was the camp's radio man, intercepting German transmissions and impersonating officers over the line to make the German command's comms net dance to Hogan's tune. Ivan Dixon played him for 5 seasons. The name was almost certainly a quiet salute to a real airman. Detroit-born Ivan C. Kinchelow Jr., a decorated Korean War ace, had become the Air Force's most celebrated test pilot by the mid-1950s and was nicknamed the first spaceman after he flew the rocket-powered Bell X-2 to the edge of space in September 1956. He died in a crash the following July. Inside a televised POW camp, his name lived on, a Cold War hero folded into a Cold War sitcom, hidden in plain sight in a character the audience never had to look up, but which airmen watching the show almost certainly caught. Number 2, Bob Crane was already the Tonight Show's drummer. Most Hogan's Heroes fans know Crane played drums. Fewer know he was already one of them. Before CBS handed him a leather jacket and Colonel bars, Bob Crane had been a regular on The Tonight Show starring Johnny Carson. He drummed on camera during the show's earliest iterations, on variety programs, and on record. In fact, Crane had built his New York reputation almost entirely as a percussionist on local shows before he ever auditioned for Hogan. By the time he walked onto the 40 Acres backlit for the Hogan's pilot, he was as close to a household name as a sideman could get in early 1960s New York. That's where the famous brisk snare drum riff at the top of the Hogan's Heroes theme comes from. It isn't a session player. It's the show's own lead, the way it's always been. Number 3, the famous theme credits a bassist the show never named. The Hogan's Heroes opening march, brassy, marching, built on a beat that snaps the show awake, was composed by Jerry Fielding, a former big band arranger who later won Emmys for The Night Stalker and wrote scores for Sam Peckinpah and Clint Eastwood. Hidden inside the recording, however, is Carol Kaye, one of the most recorded bassists in American pop history. She played on the Beach Boys' Pet Sounds, on Good Vibrations, on 1,000 film and TV scores of the era, and on dozens of the studio dates that defined the California sound of the 1960s. Her bass rides under the Hogan's March. Her credit has never appeared on the show. She was uncredited in the closing titles, the same arrangement she had on countless other studio dates that year. The march you hum belongs in part to a session legend the camera never looked at and the producer never thanked by name. Number 4, Robert Clary turned his character's persona into a real-world job. In the show, LeBeau was a resourceful Paris cook and forger. Off-screen,
Clary carried a longer title: survivor, witness, advocate.
A French Jew deported in 1942 at 16, he had been held in Otmouth, Blechhammer, and Grossrosen before being sent to Buchenwald, where he survived 2.5 years in part by singing for SS guards on Sundays. Out of 14 children in his family, he and 2 siblings lived. His parents and 10 siblings were murdered at Auschwitz.
After Hogan's Heroes ended in 1971, Clary toured the United States and Canada for decades, lecturing about the camps.
In 1994 he became one of the first 100 Holocaust survivors to be interviewed by USC's Survivors of the Shoah Visual History Foundation. When LeBeau raised his glass on screen, a man who'd drunk from a real cup was still smiling through the bad taste. Number 5, the man they called Hochstetter also stood trial at Nuremberg.
Howard Kane played Major Wolfgang Hochstetter, the Gestapo officer who could clear a room without raising his voice.
Off-screen, Kane had already worked the same material on a much larger stage. In 1961 he appeared in Stanley Kramer's Judgment at Nuremberg, the courtroom drama that put the world's most infamous Nazi judges in front of a fictional tribunal. Kane's filmography lists an uncredited witness role in that film, a small turn, but one that placed him inside the same storyline the show was later making sport of. From there it was a short hop to playing the Gestapo Major Hogan hated most. Kane had worked in Hollywood for 15 years by the time Hogan's Heroes cast him.
The actor and the role never quite separated.
Hochstetter's stare belonged to a man who knew what the stare could do. Number 6, Hilda was a hire the audience had already met under a different name.
When Cynthia Lynn's Fräulein Helga left after season 1, the writers needed a replacement fast.
Sigrid Valdis, then still credited as Patricia Olsen, had already appeared in the show in season 1, playing a character named Gretchen in a guest spot.
When the Helga role opened, the producers asked Valdis to come back, this time as Klink's new secretary Hilda.
She'd already walked the same barracks floors. The change of name disguised the fact that the new secretary was old talent, a continuity so subtle even hardcore fans missed it until the casting records came out years later.
Number 7, the original Helga was a Baltic War refugee. Cynthia Lynn's real name was Zinta Valda Ziemelis.
She was born in Riga, Latvia, in 1937. Her family fled the advancing Soviets during World War II and ended up in a displaced persons camp in Allied-occupied Germany, eventually settling in the United States.
By the time Hogan's Heroes cast her, she was 27, fluent in the European accent Fräulein Helga needed.
After season 1 she left the series, sources say, to try to save her marriage, which she later still lost. She came back twice, uncredited, in season 3's The Gold Rush and in season 4's No Names for a Lady, small cameos into the show that had once made her famous. By the time of the series finale, the woman playing the German secretary had herself been a refugee from the war. Quick rehook, if this little tour through Stalag 13 is making you want a rerun tonight and you know Schultz is about to see nothing again, hit like and subscribe before we press on.
The march is going somewhere.
Number 8, Larry Hovis was already a TV star at 12. Before he was Sergeant Carter, the camp's resident mad bomber and most non-regulation dresser, Hovis had spent 2 decades as a vocalist and drummer. As a boy in Houston, he sang on the Houston Jamboree and, in 1948 at the age of 12, won Arthur Godfrey's Talent Scouts on national television. That win kicked off a string of club gigs and recordings. He drummed for Bill Gannon's 3, played around the country, and only moved into acting later, scoring his first steady Hollywood work as Carter on Hogan's Heroes. So the guy fans loved as the camp's most explosive character was already an experienced entertainer. The drums and the TNT shared a single pair of hands.
Number 9, Ivan Dixon became one of network TV's first black directors. When Dixon left Hogan's Heroes after 5 seasons, the production never quite named the dispute, but scripts for Kinch had been thinning and his screen time was shrinking. The move was less an ending than a pivot. Between 1970 and the early 1990s, he directed more than 100 episodes of American primetime television, including The Waltons, The Rockford Files, The Bionic Woman, Magnum, P.I., The Eddie Capra Mysteries, and 5 episodes of M.A. S**H's sibling series Trapper John, MD. He also bought a Hawaiian radio station and ran it for years, and served as president of Negro Actors for Action, a civil rights organization that pushed Hollywood for fairer on-screen portrayals of black performers in an era when such pressure was only beginning to register on studio ledgers. Kinch kept the radios open in fiction. Dixon opened doors to the control room in real life. Number 10, General Burkhalter's scar was real, and the show explained why. Leon Askin played General Albert Burkhalter, the stern Berlin command who occasionally reduced Colonel Klink to a stammering mess. On screen, the character's backstory was that the scar across his cheek was earned in a student duel. Off-screen, the scar had been earned in Vienna in 1933, when the SS had beaten Askin, a Jewish man, so severely that the wound was permanent. 2 decades before Hogan's Heroes went to air, the actor was inducted into a French POW camp as an Austrian enemy and then fled to the United States in 1940. By the end of the war, both of his parents had been killed at Treblinka. The scar on General Burkhalter's face, the scar that for hundreds of episodes carried authority and menace, was the actor's proof that he'd lived through what the show lampooned. Number 11, Stalag 13 was built on the same back lot where Atlanta burned. The set of Hogan's Heroes sat on the historic 40 acres back lot in Culver City. The same patch of dirt had housed the burning of Atlanta in Gone with the Wind and, before that, dozens of silent-era biblical and Roman epics. By 1965 it played host to the Stalag 13 barracks and guard towers. Other shows at the time, Batman, The Munsters, Green Acres, filmed there too. By the time Hogan's Heroes wrapped in April 1971, the building stood empty for 3 years. Then, in 1974, the producers of the exploitation film Ilsa, She-Wolf of the SS were given permission to use the lot, and blew up the barracks and towers on camera as the climax of that film. By 1976 the entire 40 acres had been sold off and graded into the industrial complex it remains today. The last time Stalag 13's towers came down, the explosions were for somebody else's movie. Number 12, Hogan's Heroes opened as one of CBS's biggest hits. Season 1 of Hogan's Heroes finished number 9 in the Nielsen ratings for the 1965-66 television season, the rare wartime comedy to break the top 10. The numbers softened over the run, but the show was still comfortably mid-pack when CBS canceled it in April 1971. The reason had nothing to do with Nielsen and everything to do with the demographics executives Robert Wood and Fred Silverman were now chasing. Advertisers wanted younger viewers in cities. Shows that skewed older or rural were expendable, even when, like the Beverly Hillbillies and Green Acres, they were still winning their time slots. Hogan's Heroes merely had the bad luck of playing the part of its audience. Number 13, Colonel Hogan's leather jacket came with a Sinatra tale. Colonel Hogan's brown leather bomber jacket is one of the show's most recognizable pieces of wardrobe, and it had already had one famous wearer. The jacket was an A-2 bomber supplied by Western Costume Company, the same Hollywood supplier that had dressed Frank Sinatra's Colonel Joseph Ryan in the 1965 war film Von Ryan's Express. When that production wrapped, the jacket went back into Western costume stock, and was pulled again for Hogan's Heroes with a new name patch, Hogan, sewn over the original. For 6 seasons, it defined Bob Crane's silhouette. The same jacket later appeared on screen in 2002, when actor Craig W. Van Sickle wore it for the biographical film Autofocus, the picture about Crane's life and murder. Sinatra wore it. Crane wore it. A museum in Ohio owns it today, reunited with Klink's uniform and Schultz's overcoat. 1 piece of cloth, 4 sets of shoulders. Number 14, Bob Crane was murdered in Scottsdale, and his co-star found him. On June 29, 1978, Crane was on tour with a dinner theater production of the play Beginner's Luck. He had been staying at the Winfield Place Apartments in Scottsdale, Arizona, sharing them with his co-star, the actress Victoria and Barry. That afternoon, Barry came to check on him when he didn't respond. She found Crane bludgeoned to death in the apartment. He was 49. The murder weapon was never established. The coroner reported blunt force trauma, but the case file never settled on what struck the fatal blow.
The killing stunned fans who still thought of him as Colonel Hogan. Within months, Arizona investigators had focused on John Henry Carpenter, an acquaintance of Crane's from his Los Angeles radio drama days. The trial of Carpenter, the only person ever indicted for Crane's killing, would take 16 years to reach a courtroom, and another 4 to finish.
We get to it on number 15. Number 15, the murder trial ended in acquittal and the case file never closed. In 1994, John Henry Carpenter stood trial in Phoenix for the murder of Bob Crane. The prosecution argued that he had bludgeoned Crane in a jealous rage over the actor's relationship with Victoria and Barry. The defense argued that the blood spatter and forensic evidence didn't match a single assailant, and that the murder weapon was never identified. The first jury deadlocked and a mistrial was declared. A retrial followed, and Carpenter was acquitted. Crucially, blood evidence that had originally been used to place him at the scene was later excluded after questions were raised about procedures at the FBI crime lab. The murder weapon has never been recovered. The case has never been officially closed. To this day, the file is still listed as an open homicide in Maricopa County records, and Bob Crane's killer, if Crane had a single killer, has never been named by any court. A sitcom set in a fake prisoner of war camp outlived the actor who ran it, and the courtroom never caught up. The march, in every sense, never really ended. So there you have it, 15 shocking facts about Hogan's heroes: the Korean War test pilot hiding in a sergeant's last name, the Tonight Show drummer turned colonel, the session legend who never got screen credit, the Buchenwald survivor who spent his retirement as a witness, the Judgment at Nuremberg actor who then played the Gestapo on CBS, the secretary who had already been on the lot the season before, the Latvian refugee behind Fräulein Helga, the kid who won talent scouts before he could shave, the actor who turned 5 seasons into 100 episodes as a black director in network television, the scar that doubled as proof of survival, the back lot with a Gone with the Wind past and an exploitation movie exit, the show that opened as a top 10 hit, the Sinatra-class bomber jacket, and the murder case that is technically still open in Maricopa County 60 years later. What does the show mean to you now that you know what was hiding in the credits, the cast, and the courtroom? Hit the comments. Which one of these 15 facts changed the way you see Stalag 13, and which one surprised you most? Was it the Kincheloe tribute, the Judgment at Nuremberg actor who then played Hochstetter, or the murder trial that ended with no verdict and no closure? And tell us, did the people behind the show making this brand of Cold War comedy in 1965 deserve any of what came after, from Nielsen to the courtroom? If A Long Night with Colonel Hogan is overdue, share this with the friend who still hears that March the 2nd Hogan walks onto the screen. Hit like, hit subscribe, comment which fact hit you hardest, and keep watching. Back before.